Vietnam crisis, and we lost that one. And they always come up with the same lines. Give us more time, more money, and more blood, and we could win this. They're not winning anything. They haven't won since Grenada, and they haven't won since the time they beat the street gang out in Panama, the Noriega gang. They keep dumping trillions of dollars into this, and they're losing. The greatest president, I believe, in my lifetime was Dwight D. Eisenhower, a 5-star general, the supreme commander of the Allied forces, a 2-term president and a Republican at that. As he leaves office, he warns the American people that the military-industrial complex is robbing the people of the genius of its scientists, the sweat of its laborers, the future of the children. Well, here we are, folks. Anybody that would be man enough to call Eisenhower full of baloney, I would dare them. It's happened to us. They're robbing our future. They're robbing our present. This is perfect empire decline, robbing the treasury, depleting it as the nation's going into free fall. How about fixing up Detroit for starters? I'm a Bronx guy. I'll take you around some beautiful South Bronx areas that I'm sure you'd love to raise your family in. How about putting America first and stopping these foreign entanglements? And these are the planks, by the way, of the new third party that we see developing by 2012.
Well, the leaders are becoming nervous now, and you're right about Eisenhower. He warned us. We didn't heed the warning, and here we are all these years later, and we're in big trouble, Gerald. Everything's collapsing. What about, because they're training troops now, the military-industrial complex has gotten the law repealed, which allowed them to use U.S. troops on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens. So now they're training these troops in Texas so that when we have the civil unrest, they can deploy the troops and use them against U.S. citizens. It's outrageous. So they're nervous. They're concerned about what's going to happen here at home. What about our personal freedoms disappearing as you see this terrorism happen, Gerald? You're predicting it, but then we have the increasing police state. We have more freedoms disappearing. What are your thoughts as you see that happening?
Just look at the facts. Obama's out Bush on the Patriot Act, on habeas corpus, on rendition, on wiretapping. And when you tell the liberals this, of course, you know, he sent, how many more troops into Afghanistan? About 50,000 more troops and more to come. He's launched more Predator missile strikes into Pakistan, a sovereign country, in this first year of office than George Bush did all during his last year of office. He's out Bush every way. And he's one of the ones taking away our freedoms. And when you tell liberals this, the only thing they do is they respond with their quiche-eating grin and balsamic smile, saying, oh, he's only doing the best he can. Oh, give him time. Give him time. And so we know they're going to keep taking our freedoms away from us, and people should realize that they're already doing it with this so-called terror strike on Christmas Day. And we're going to see more of it. So they'll use terrorism and fear as they've used under the Bush administration to keep controlling the people more and more.
So false flag incidents in order to increase the police state. We're here to help you.
False flag or real, anything that happens, they will trump it up in aces to make it so they could control our futures, so that they control people from dissent. And that, look what happened at the G20 meetings in Pittsburgh. They had enough stormtroopers out there. I was speaking to a Russian correspondent that told me that the Russian leaders were flabbergasted at the amount of security of what was going on and the police state activities going on in Pittsburgh, in the heart of America's freedom. Come on. All you have to do is look at these stormtroopers that they had enough body armor on to walk through the Battle of the Bulge unscathed. And here they are swinging their batons at helpless little screaming co-eds. This is America? And it's the same thing. You know, the little people get out of line. Boy, they crack down on you, smash you to bits, and we're losing our rights left and right.
It's interesting you mentioned Russia because in the interview with Lord Christopher Monckton, I mentioned to him Europe is descending into this communist police state, right? That the beacon of freedom is becoming Russia. And here you're telling me they're even coming to the United States and going, wow, these guys really know how to crack down. I mean, everything is shifting, right?
Yes. And again, this was told to me by a Russian correspondent.
One of your trends, because I want to get back to these, you had so many for 2010, but it's neo-survivalism. Can you discuss that, Gerald?
You're on your own. You better make it, and you better get smart about it. Only the strong will survive. The survival of the fit, emotionally, spiritually, physically. You know, we go back to the survivalism trends. A number of very interesting things are happening. The first big one was, of course, you know, when I was a young man, when they were fearful of the nuclear blasts blowing us to bits and people building bomb shelters to withstand the effects of the fallout. And then we had the second round was under the Jimmy Carter days of high inflation, the Iranian conflict, gold prices soaring, people heading to the hills with their AK-47s and pork and beans, wanting to fight off the hungry hordes. And then we saw the Y2K survivalism, when a number of people feared that with the computer clock hitting 2000, the world would go dark and chaos would ensue. And it's very interesting because now a new survivalism, a holistic survivalism is taking place. But with each survival scare, a wider demographic keeps going into it. It's no longer associated with the redneck stereotype. The Y2K brought in a whole different genre, demographic, socioeconomic class. And that's what we're seeing with this neo-survivalism. It's just people being smart about what to expect. It's about planning for the worst. You always could pull back from the worst, but you can't pull back from anything if you have nothing planned. And so we're going to see neo-survivalism in many different forms, from growing your own food, being as self-sustaining as you are, getting off the grid. If you live in a city, know your neighbors, know your community. What if something does happen? Do you have plans if there's a terror strike to leave? Do you have money, cash on hand? What if there's an attack on the ATM system? Let's go back to 2001 when 9/11 happened. They shut down Wall Street. If you had certificates of deposit and tried to cash them in, you couldn't cash them in. And I know that firsthand because that's what I tried to do. I was prepared. We had forecast terror was going to happen. And I live just north of Ground Zero. So I was ready to go into action. If they hit the nuclear power plant on the Hudson River and they're telling us planes are shooting down the Hudson, what would it mean? Well, it would mean chaos like no one's ever seen before. So I was ready to head to Canada. I want to grab my money, grab my guns, grab my gold, and go. But I couldn't. I had no money. I would have gone anyway, but my money was all wrapped up in CDs. Again, being prepared for the worst. I'll never make that mistake again. I learned from it. People should understand if there's a terror strike of 9/11 magnitude, this time more than just closing Wall Street, they'll close the banks because we're in a much weaker economic situation than we were back then. Will you be able to withstand the future? Are you prepared? Are you a survivalist? Are you physically, mentally, spiritually prepared for what lies ahead?
And along with all of that, Gerald, I know you've said this in past interviews, but for new listeners globally, have some food stores or foodstuffs in the house, correct?
Exactly. What again, you know, not to look at it as in the sense of you're going to have to be held up for a year at a time, because if it's like that, you know, I don't want to be here. I'll go someplace else. The way to look at it is, do you have enough to weather the storm? Do you have enough that you're prepared where if you don't have any water, if you don't have any electricity, do you have enough to survive on for weeks, maybe a month or so that you can make your next step, do your next plan, put in practice what you've learned? And again, always remember that the situation is entirely fluid. You never know what to expect. So for me, you know, I have a more than a month, because as I said, if it's going to be those kind of conditions, I don't want to be around here. And if it's going to take me more than a month to get out of here and I have to get out, then I messed up really badly. So those are the kind of things, the way I look at it. Everyone, our motto at the Trends Research Institute is think for yourself. We don't tell people what to believe, and nobody tells us. There's enough information